Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. We're here this morning to announce that Connecticut has filed suit against 4 ghost gun manufacturers, out-of-state ghost gun manufacturers, for illegally selling ghost guns here in Connecticut. The 4 manufacturers are Indie Guns LLC, Steel Fox Firearms Inc., Hellfire Armory, and AR Industries LLC. So what are ghost guns? Why are we here? Ghost guns are unserialized, untraceable, unregistered, fully functional, in most cases fully automatic firearms that one can make at home. Because they're unserialized and unregistered and untraceable, that's why they're ghosts. They're literally unknowable to law enforcement, and I want to thank our partners in the state police for their assistance in our investigation. These are guns that put Connecticut families, residents, and law enforcement at risk because we can't trace them. And it's impossible at any one time to know how many of these ghost guns are out there and how great the risk is, but the risk is increasing. So ghost guns are guns that are untraceable, unserialized, unregistered. Ghost gun parts can be bought on the internet from at least these 4 companies and many others. And ghost gun parts in general, and we have some here today, represent 80% of the gun. When you go on a website, a ghost gun manufacturer and seller, you will see that they advertise an 80% receiver. And what that refers to is 80% of the machined guts of the firearm. It does not normally include the trigger mechanism and the bolt that projects the bullet or projectile. But if you go on YouTube, within, I'm told, 20 minutes to an hour, anybody can take ghost gun parts, the 80% lower receiver, and machine that into a fully functional firearm, fully automatic firearm, in the comfort of your own home and basement without any knowledge or detection by law enforcement or authorities. Selling these firearms, selling these parts is highly illegal under Connecticut law. Not only are they dangerous and highly illegal, they're a menace. And I'm going to talk about why they're such a menace here in Connecticut. So in 2018, when I was still in the legislature and I was chairman of the Judiciary Committee, I wrote the first statute, the first bill to ban ghost guns here in Connecticut. And for those of you who were around then and followed the debate, there was some initial skepticism about ghost guns because not a lot was known about ghost guns. People were hearing about ghost guns for the first time. I remember Jeremy and I, you and I, having a conversation about ghost guns, and they were really the frontier at that time of illegal firearms. We passed a ban on ghost guns in 2019, and that went into law in October of 2019. But let me just tell you what a menace they've become. So back in 2020, in Hartford alone, police seized 252 guns, and 7 were ghost guns. Just a year later, in 2021, of the 341 guns seized, 21 guns, 3 times, were then ghost guns. And now, fast forward to 2022, just a year ago, of the 353 guns seized, now 57 were ghost guns. This is an exponential growth in the number of ghost guns we find on our streets here in Connecticut and in our capital city. These are parts that can be easily obtained online and purchased by people here in Connecticut, even though it is obviously and clearly illegal. Why is it illegal? Because in October 2019, we passed a law that says in Connecticut, no person shall purchase, receive, sell, deliver, or otherwise transfer an unfinished frame or lower receiver. Okay, so it's very explicit that these parts are illegal. And if you want to buy these parts, they must bear a serial number or unique identification number, and they have to be sold or transferred according to the same procedures as you would have to follow if you bought a pistol or revolver under Connecticut law, which means that the seller receives authorization from the Commissioner of the Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection to sell, that there's a background check on the purchaser, and that the sale is made to or between a FFL, a federally licensed firearm dealer. Unfortunately, we have found that you can buy these parts in contravention of those rules against the law here in Connecticut, and with the participation and help of our state police here in Connecticut, we've acquired and purchased 4 80% receivers that I'm going to show to you today. So what are our claims in this lawsuit? Our claims are pretty straightforward consumer protection claims under Connecticut law, that these manufacturers and sellers have broken Connecticut's consumer protection laws by selling these firearm parts for sale here in Connecticut against the law, and that they have deceived and lied to Connecticut purchasers by representing that it's legal to buy these guns here in Connecticut, or strongly implying that these guns are legal to purchase here in Connecticut, or even though there is some light disclaimer on their website about state laws that bar the sale and purchase of these firearm parts here in Connecticut, they ship them anyway here in Connecticut. They also, these firearm parts and these transactions violate Connecticut law because it's illegal to own these products here in Connecticut. And under our consumer protection laws, to sell these parts that are clearly illegal is a clear violation of Connecticut law and subjects you to severe fines and penalties under our state's consumer protection laws, and may actually subject people to criminal liability. So I just want to make it very clear to the manufacturers and sellers of these ghost gun parts, it is highly illegal to sell these parts here in Connecticut, and if you do that, we are going to come after you, and we are going to hold you accountable, and you will face the most severe consequences under Connecticut law. So let me show you these parts. Before I do that, I have to put on my plastic gloves to make sure I can handle this, this evidence that we've collected. So what we did was we partnered with state police and we acquired these parts. So let me show you first. This is from Indie Guns. If you go to their website, this is a 80% lower receiver for an AR-15. The same weapon that killed 26 people in Newtown, that is now illegal here in Connecticut for purchase. But you can buy an 80% receiver from Indie Guns, and with some additional tooling at home, and you can buy that tooling, by the way, on these websites with some additional tooling, and with a YouTube video, you can turn this into a fully auto AR-15 assault rifle. What's particularly disturbing about Indie Guns is that nowhere on Indie Guns' website is there a warning, a notice, or any type of disclaimer informing consumers that it's illegal to purchase these firearms here in Connecticut. And we purchased them with the assistance of state police. They shipped it to a P.O. box here in Connecticut, no problem. What is also disturbing about Indie Guns is the language they use on their website. They quote a Supreme Court case from a long time ago where they say one of the ordinary modes by which tyrants accomplish their purposes without resistance is by disarming the people. And then in their marketing on their website, they talk about how craft guns make us feel rooted. They give us a sense of belonging and connect us with our history. Our ancestors created these out of necessity. Now we build them to put personal firearms beyond the reach of government. So this is insurrectionist type language about tyrants and about taking up arms against the government. And by their marketing and advertising, they emphasize that you can buy these parts and fashion firearms and be beyond the reach of government. A couple of other examples. This one is Steel Fox Firearms at steelfoxfirearms.com. $74.99, not even $100 to buy an AR-15 80% lower receiver. Now, what's bad about Steel Fox is that there is some language on Steel Fox's website about Connecticut law and the fact that this may be illegal or is illegal under Connecticut law, but they still sold it to us anyway. They shipped it anyway. So not only did they fail to follow the law, but they had clear knowledge of the law and shipped the 80% receiver to us. Hellfire. Hellfire Armory. Hellfirearmory.com. Hellfire's marketing says this is an AR-15 80% lower receiver, and it says there are no logos, no serial numbers, and no stamps. That's part of their marketing, to make sure you understand that this is a ghost gun and it's untraceable. And of course, the name Hellfire suggests that, you know, this is very serious weaponry and underscores its stopping power. Hellfire, by the way, also provides instructions on their website on how to assemble an AR-15. And finally, I have here AR Industries, yet another manufacturer. AR Industries is based in Utah. AR Industries, like Steel Fox, does have some references to Connecticut law. It says we don't ship to Connecticut, and then they shipped it to us anyway. Okay? And so these are clearly, again, companies that have knowledge of Connecticut law, that these parts are illegal, that they're dangerous, and they ship them to us anyway. So I don't have to tell you how scary it is to think about the risk and the damage that these parts, these guns, you've got the makings, 80% right here, right now, of 4 fully automatic weapons that, with some additional tooling at home, with parts that you can procure, you know, at a hardware store and online, that we could turn these into killing machines, weapons of war that could end up on Connecticut streets today. That is the tremendous risk that these weapons pose. As I said before, it is highly illegal to sell these products here in Connecticut. We were able to purchase them. They're clearly being sold in violation of the law, and Connecticut takes this action today to sue these manufacturers, and we will go after others to make sure that these future guns don't end up on Connecticut streets. We couldn't do this work without state police, without the moms who demand action. I want to thank you for being here today. And let me turn it over to our longtime partner in consumer protection, Commissioner Michelle Siegel. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you to the Attorney General's office. You know, the mission of the Department of Consumer Protection is to protect public health and safety. And it's hard to imagine a bigger threat to public health and safety than the illegal sale of these gun parts into the state. And so we are grateful to be able to work with the Attorney General and partner with him and appreciate his really bold and strong action to address this marketplace. You know, we want fair, well-working marketplaces in this state where consumers can go, and that means you can't have people selling illegal products, and it's that much worse when the product can be so harmful to the public. So we are proud to be able to support the Attorney General in bringing about this investigation and case. And with that, I will turn it back to you. Thank you.
Another partner in the fight against gun violence, Jeremy Stein of Connecticut Against Gun Violence.
Thank you, William. I really do want to thank our Attorney General, William Tong, and the State Police. This is really unique because William came to me and others back in, I think, as early as 2017, and as he said earlier, he said, what do you think about banning ghost guns? And I'll be honest, at that point in 2017, I said, what are you talking about? And so I had to educate myself, like many others. But once I started reading about it and talking to partners that we had in California, they knew all about ghost guns because they were starting to see the beginning of an epidemic or a pandemic, but a public health crisis unlike they've ever seen. They started seeing these unmarked, unserialized, untraceable guns being manufactured in people's basements by people who are bypassing some of the strongest gun laws in the country. And they said, if you are not careful, Connecticut, you are going to see the same problem that we're having on the West Coast. And when William and others, but mostly William, championed this, legislators and others kind of said, well, it's not really a problem in Connecticut yet, right? So why do we have to do anything about it? Well, unfortunately, the same approach was taken when Columbine happened. And people said, well, you know, that happened in Colorado. That didn't happen here. Why should we worry about it? And, of course, what did we see? We saw 26 people, 20 children die in Sandy Hook, and then we've seen that same thing happen in Parkland and other places around the country because we're ignoring what's happening around the country and thinking that we're immune. Well, thank God in Connecticut we banned ghost guns. And I think it's amazing to see that now that William's our Attorney General, that he's doing everything in his power to make sure that these guns stay out of Connecticut and make sure that they are not bypassing what we have in Connecticut as the strongest gun laws in the country. So we cannot ignore this. What we're seeing is there was a bust in New Britain where over 100 homemade guns were recovered. This was, and then in January, they seized in Connecticut 130 untraceable guns in somebody's basement. Somebody was actually making guns with 3D printers, but they're also getting them places like, as Attorney General Tong had mentioned, readily online. And there's actually no prohibition from even having a minor, if they have a credit card, from obtaining the parts to make an AR-15. And what we've seen is this is a dramatic problem growing across the country and right here in Connecticut. In fact, the ATF did an analysis, and they said that the rate of ghost guns that they're seeing between 2017 and 2021 increased by 1,000%. 1,000%. I just left Chief Spagnolo in Waterbury, the Waterbury chief, and he said that they recovered, I think it was 212 guns, and about 22 of those were ghost guns. And that is a rate that 10 to 12 to 15% of all guns that are recovering in their cities is increasing rapidly. So I applaud our Attorney General, State Police, and all the attorneys that are standing behind us who are going to do everything in their power to make sure that we stop this next pandemic from happening. So thank you.
Thank you. Let me just, before I invite our next speakers, when I was elected to the legislature in 2006, in those first few years we talked a lot about gun trafficking, and we still talk a lot about gun trafficking. But when we talked about gun trafficking then, we were talking about what was known as the iron pipeline and the now notorious trunk full of guns, where somebody comes from a state with permissive gun laws, puts guns in the back of their car, drives them up 95, and finds their way to Hartford, for example, where we took a walk, right, 5 Corners, and opens up the trunk and sells them for cash. And so that was the focus of our law enforcement work then, and it still is, in stopping that iron pipeline. this raises the stakes exponentially, because now you don't rely on that pipeline. This pipeline now goes through UPS or FedEx or the United States Postal Service, and you can just buy 80% of a fully automatic assault weapon and make it at home and totally bypass the iron pipeline and traditional gun trafficking, which is what makes this so dangerous. And I know that there are so many families that are touched by this. This work is entirely about protecting families that have lost way too much in this battle against gun violence. And I want to introduce Deborah Davis, who represents families and Mothers United Against Violence.
Hi, my name is Henrietta.
Sorry.
Oh, there you are.
There she is.
Henrietta Beckman. I was going to step in for Deborah Davis, but she's here. But I just want to say I applaud the effort to ban these ghost guns and to bring this lawsuit, because in the inner city, our children are dying from regular guns. So why would we want ghost guns that are untraceable to be in our communities, to continue bringing devastation to our community? So I just want to say that on behalf of Mothers United Against Violence, we support your efforts and we are with you.
Yes, 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 yes. And it's even more important to note that we're always the victims in every circumstance. We use our inner cities as dumping grounds, and it's unfortunate. So part of our work is to make certain that we can protect and make sure, it's really important, that the victim and the suspect is caught prior to dumping guns in our communities and actually selling them. And so we know in the state of Indiana, they are able to go right to the border and just give guns to young people. They're giving them out. They're not selling them, they're giving them out. And these are some of the things that we want to make sure that our Attorney General definitely makes a closer look at where it's coming from. And I believe, because we are always victimized as urban cities, we want to make sure that we have some protection at the front end of this. And I believe that with all of the families that have been impacted, not just by regular guns and just by what's going on in the country, as you know, there's so much all over, we want to make sure that we stand guard as Mothers United Against Violence and other folks throughout the inner city areas where we do the work. We go into the homes. We actually talk about retaliation. We actually try to identify where some of these guns are coming from. And our major goal is access. How are they getting them so quickly? So this is why we really, really support this effort, because we know that ghost guns is just another level of how we are losing and people are being taken for literally nothing. And we can look at the situations and say, you may have had the best sneakers on today. Simple as that. We are losing children to the most simple, unbelievable cases. So we are not ready to really have any more of our kids taken. And these ghost guns, we know they're all over this country. They're all over this world. We know that. So whatever we can do to help support this effort and to make certain that we're not victimized again and again at every level, we want to make sure that we stand close to the Attorney General in this effort to make sure that our voices are heard and that the effort is done. We don't want to react. We want to be proactive, and that's really the key. Thank you.
The reason why I asked the Mothers United Against Violence to be here today is because anecdotally we know, in speaking with our criminal law enforcement partners in state police and local police, that many of these ghost guns end up in the hands of young people. And that is a huge risk and problem to our families here in Connecticut, particularly our urban families. And so let me ask Caitlin Doherty of the Newtown Action Alliance to join us.
Good morning. My name is Caitlin Doherty, and I was 8 years old when the Sandy Hook tragedy occurred 15 minutes away from my own elementary school. I now help lead Newtown Action Alliance's weekly End Gun Violence luncheon lobby sessions, and I'm also a leader of my college's Trinity Against Gun Violence group where I attend. I'm here on behalf of Newtown Action Alliance to support Attorney General Tong's efforts to enhance the enforcement of ghost gun sales. Ghost guns are a growing problem for law enforcement efforts to reduce violent crimes in the U.S. As others have said, a recent ATF report found that ghost gun recoveries increased 1,000% between 2016 and 2021. A total of 45,000 unserialized weapons were recovered in that time period. Nearly 700 were linked to homicides or attempted homicides. Connecticut is one of the 10 states that regulates ghost guns, and the ATF rule change on ghost guns went into effect last August. The final rule change ensures that firearms with split receivers are subject to regulations requiring serial numbers and background checks when purchased from a licensed dealer, manufacturer, or importer. However, less than a month after the ATF required serial numbers and background checks for build, buy, shoot kits, sellers have found a workaround for these rules. Laws, regulations, and rules are only effective with proper enforcement. We support the efforts to close any loopholes in Connecticut's ghost gun regulation and fully support Attorney General Tong and his efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Questions?
How hard would it be? So, let's just take an example like sports gambling or internet gambling. So, if you live in another state where that's not legal and you log on to one of those gambling websites, it says, "Sorry, can't log on, can't get on this website." So, how hard would it be to just trace people's IP addresses who are trying to log on to these websites from Connecticut and saying, "Can't get on"?
You're saying how hard would it be to find out whether these resellers know that?
No, to stop people from purchasing them who are living in Connecticut. You can put a block on them from even accessing.
Well, I think in most cases those blocks are put on and enforced by the seller. And so if you're running a company out of state and you're, your example was sports gaming, right? I mean, the geolocation technology, I think, is provided by the company that's doing the selling of the gaming product. And so I don't think the state of Connecticut has the technology or the resources to police every seller in Utah and Florida and Texas and beyond. I mean, there's a proliferation of these sellers and manufacturers, and it's on them to follow the law and not on state police to find some technology to block them. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Jeremy brought up a good point with regard to, you can 3D print these things as well. So is that yet another obstacle that's even harder to track?
I know that we considered the 3D printing issue and plastic guns when we wrote this law. We're focused today on what is clearly hard metal capable of producing a fully automatic firearm.
In the course of this investigation or for sellers or companies here, did you attempt or did state police attempt to purchase from other companies and find that they were successfully blocked from doing so?
I can't speak to the scope of our investigation except to say that these 4 manufacturers clearly sold to us here in Connecticut.
Has anyone in the state of Connecticut been prosecuted for purchasing one of these receivers?
You're asking about criminal prosecution. I don't have that information.
On the AR-15, you mentioned several times. So, what more would need to be done for the AR-15? In other words, these look relatively small here. Are you saying that these companies would sell you the other parts to make an AR-15, or you have to find that out yourself?
So I'm not an expert, and when you said small, I mean later come by and put on some gloves, and I can show you that these are substantial machined parts that clearly by handling them you can tell they're capable of handling the impact of firing a bullet projectile. And I think you have to use your imagination a little bit and envision this as a fully functional AR where there's a handle, there's a butt coming out the back. Those are things that are easily attached or assembled, and then it's the trigger mechanism and the bolt. And yes, you can buy those parts online either from these sellers or from other manufacturers and sellers, but it is not hard to acquire those parts, in addition to some tools and tooling from a local hardware store, again, to pull this off in 20 minutes to an hour.
You mentioned that these parts are being shipped in through UPS, FedEx, USPS. How much responsibility do those companies and the U.S. Postal Service bear in making sure that these products aren't?
Good question. And, you know, our investigation covers the whole supply chain and pipeline, and if we find that people have knowledge that they're aiding and abetting or assisting in the sale of illegal products, we'll hold them accountable.
Are the states where these weapons are coming from doing anything to prosecute?
I'm not aware of any enforcement actions in those states.
How many states are like Connecticut? In other words, how many states are ghost guns legal and how many are they illegal?
I think, thanks to Caitlin, she cited 10 states that have made them illegal in the same way that we have. I think Connecticut was first, or close to first.
So these are companies that are shipping illegal guns into Connecticut. Do we know, are there any companies that we've identified that are making these guns in Connecticut and either shipping them out of state or within our state?
So I'm not aware of Connecticut-based firearm companies and what they're currently selling. Obviously, at various points, we had a fairly robust gun manufacturing industry here in Connecticut, and we still have some companies here in Connecticut, and they may continue to make firearms that you know, may qualify as assault weapons. I don't know today. They're not able to be sold here in Connecticut.
Can you talk about what type of penalties you're seeking in this lawsuit?
Yeah, so we just commenced the lawsuit, and as part of our lawsuit, we'll continue our investigation. Suffice to say that we will seek the maximum amount of fines and penalties under our consumer protection laws.
Can I ask one background question?
Sure.
As far as the ATF's position on the
Sure.
firearm parts, is there anything in legislation that they can do a federal ban on these, or is this just the Wild West right now?
Well, we are encouraged by ATF's action in their classification of these parts. It's my understanding that ATF believes these parts to be firearms now according to federal law, and that ATF wants to require these parts to be serialized and registered in states where that's required. You know, we bought these parts recently. They're unserialized and they're unregistered. And so I think it speaks for itself. These are illegal under Connecticut law. While we support ATF and its actions, we're clearly seeing these parts being bought and sold here in Connecticut, and it's still a huge risk to us.
And also, just to be clear, you got one each from each of these manufacturers?
Correct.
In other words, okay, so you didn't continue it on and they sold you 10 guns?
No, but I'll tell you what. If you go on, I can't remember which one it was. It might have been Steel Fox, but I encourage you all to go back and bring up the websites for these companies. One of them sold for roughly $1,000 an AK-47, and I don't think that was. I don't think those were 80% parts. I mean, they're selling a fully functional AK-47. So take a look at the website. They sell all manner of firearms and 80% receivers, and they make no bones about it.
And one time again, you said you can get these things for like $75. Is that what you said?
Or yeah,
Give or take?
around there.
One off topic.
Yeah.
In terms of the Stone Academy investigation, any updates on that? Can you say anything about whether Stone?
We're focused on it. Actually, a number of team members in our consumer protection group that are doing this work are also focused on Stone Academy, and we're doing everything we can to help the students. I think one of the challenges that we're trying to tackle, that the state's trying to tackle right now, is to understand how many students were impacted, who paid what to Stone, right, where they are in their education and clinical and licensing and test taking process, Unfortunately, that information is not super clear, and so in order to help the students, you have to know where they are and what they're owed. And so that continues to be a focus of the state, and our investigation of Stone itself and holding them accountable is proceeding as fast and as aggressively as we possibly can.
Have they complied with the subpoena in any way?
I think they're working with us. I can't say that it's been difficult, but we're working on it. Anyone else on ghost guns? All right, thanks everybody. Yeah, I think we have to focus on all of it.